All right. Hi everyone. My name's Jack Steingass. Who am I here with?
My name is Miller Weir,
Hello, Miller. So I'm gonna ask you some questions about Game of Thrones, something that both of us have in common. Are you ready?
for sure. Let's do it.
Um, some intro questions. How did you first get into Game of Thrones?
Um, I had a childhood friend who was really into fantasy novels at a very young age, and he kind of introduced me to it. And I probably first started watching it my senior year of high school and never looked back. I've rewatched it several times, and it's become a key part of my life. I don't know where I'd be without it.
I'm a big fan as well.
Yeah,
Um, have you ever read the books or just watched the show?
I have. I've been reading them for the past little bit. I'm almost done with the final one that's been released at least. So
Oh,
should be finishing them up pretty soon.
all right, now we're gonna get a little deeper into it. Who's your favorite character and why?
Um, I mean, pretty easily for me, I'd have to say it's Jamie Lannister. He's pretty easily my favorite. The why? I mean, it's just growth, man. He's a deep character. There's a lot going on to him. You see him grow and you start out hating him and then you figure out what's really going on behind the scenes and it's a special experience.
Yeah,
He's a
I'm
good man.
yeah, I'm an Alphonse Elric kind of guy.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
he's up there for me.
yeah, he's awesome. That's just not anyways, what's next?
Um, so another question I had written down, I think it's kind of the same as your favorite character. Do you think Jamie had the best character arc? And if so, who would be your second best character arc?
I mean, there are so many good ones, man. I personal bias, I'd probably say yes, but if we're just going off the show, there's spoiler alert, he doesn't have the best ending in my opinion. So if we're just going off show, I think you could give it to someone like Theon Greyjoy, someone who has a little bit of a better, more satisfactory conclusion, maybe. But throughout the prime years of the show, I would say no one really touches Jamie's arc.
I like those as the one and two.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Ooh, this is a fun one I have written down. If you could bring back one character who died, who would it be? This 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 might be kind of a layup, but
Yeah, I think my first thought would be to what maybe you were thinking as the layup, and that would be either Rob or Ned Stark, who again, spoiler alert, two very tragic deaths. But I think going a little bit further back in the timeline at the very beginning of the whole saga, I would have to say Rhaegar Targaryen, who dies and kind of his death kind of allows for Robert Baratheon to become king, and that's kind of the event that sparks the whole battle for power that we see going on during the show.
the
So I
Game
would
of
say him,
Thrones.
yes, the Game of Thrones, exactly. I think him coming back would change a lot of events, and I think a lot of characters that we see die would not have had Rhaegar not died in the beginning. So that would kind of be my answer to that.
Which villain do you think was the most compelling?
Most compelling, I think, I mean, the most entertaining was probably either Ramsay Bolton or Tywin Lannister. But I think between those, I think the most compelling one would be Tywin. I think he's, a little bit more relatable between the two. He's not an easy guy to relate to necessarily, but when he's, compared to a psychopath, it's a little easier to relate, I think. I would
Yeah.
say Um, kind of when I mean, from someone who has a understanding of reading the books and, having seen the show multiple times, maybe I've picked up on a few things that some other people haven't seen throughout just one watch. But I think when you get deeper into time, when you see a pretty severe insecurity, and I think that's kind of what stems a lot of his actions. And I think that's something that's very relatable, not necessarily his actions, but his motivations. It's very, very commonplace, I think, in the real world.
What do you think he's insecure about?
Well, I mean, if I know you've seen the show, you've mentioned, and there's kind of that new like meme almost of, the lion not concerning himself with the opinions of the sheep. And that's a line that Tywin says in the show, when in reality, he cares very deeply about what others think of him, those so-called sheep.
Yeah,
The opinions of them are really what's driving him. He wants to be feared. He wants to be seen as in power. And, he's losing the war against Robb Stark, and his kind of public image is suffering as that because of that. And, his son Jamie is held prisoner. His other son, that is his only son that's free because Jamie's imprisoned, is, a dwarf. And he really, that bruises his ego. So that I think that's kind of what leads him to, again, spoiler alert, commit, the acts of the Red Wedding and put that all into motion. He
yeah,
can't really suffer that mental wound of losing this war to a child. And he just kind of breaks all the rules of honorable and, you know, uh, guest right and all those rules that are just so common in
yeah.
Westeros. That's kind of how I see it.
Is there a storyline you think dragged on a little too long?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's season 5, and it even goes into season 6. So really 2 seasons worth of the story within King's Landing, which is obviously one of the main locations of the show, is the plot of, the Faith Militant and the High Sparrows and everything that's going on with the faith of the Seven in King's Landing and how they've taken a good chunk of power,
Yeah,
and I think again, as someone who's read the books, it's a little bit different. Things, don't necessarily drag on as much in that. And in the show, there's just a little bit too much of that. I think it drags on a little too much. I think they made it a little bit too big of a part of the show. Um, it's not the most entertaining plot line to me.
now, which region did you find the most interesting? Like, did you find more? I'm more so talking about like the earlier parts of the show. Did you find like John and like what was going on with him the most interesting, or the stuff at King's Landing, or what Daenerys was doing?
I think, I'll kind of resort to my first watch experience here. I think going into each episode during that first watch, I was mainly looking to see what was going on um, up north, with John, because that's kind of where all the mystery lies, with the White Walkers and all that. You don't know what's going on. That's kind of the main fantasy and magic component of the show. So there's a lot of questions you have unanswered. And then, I personally, the Daenerys plot, I mean, it's great, it's well done, but I mean, even on the first watch, it got boring at times. And then King's Landing, the first season with everything Ned's doing, I mean, that's really entertaining. But I think each episode, I was really curious what was going on up north.
Yeah, I think I lean King's Landing, but the North isn't a bad. It's not a bad answer.
Yeah,
Um, Now I'm gonna get into a couple season specific questions. What do you think the strongest season was?
I mean, I think it's got to be season 4. I mean, front to back, it's just beautifully done, and it's just 10 incredibly entertaining episodes. I think that's the best season of TV I've ever seen. I mean, the last probably 5 episodes are all just incredible. And even that front half of the season, there's some really good ones in there. Notable moments throughout that season, obviously as I've said, spoiler warning for the whole thing. But early in the season, you got Joffrey's wedding and death. Then you have Tyrion's trial and his trial by combat with Oberyn Martell. And then later on in the season, at the end of it, you got the battle for the wall. And then in the season finale, you have everything going on with Tyrion's escape after he's convicted of Joffrey's murder, which he didn't commit, of course, and him finally killing his father, Tywin, and that being kind of the conclusion of the season. It's really good, really, really good TV.
Now, that's your favorite. What do you think your least favorite season was?
I mean, I think the easiest answer is eight. The last season, kind of, publicly known as the weakest one. It's only 6 episodes, very rushed. There's a lot of stuff they don't really expand on. Everything just kind of seems to happen immediately. It's just a little too much going on all at once and not enough time taken. But I would say other than that, because that's a little bit too obvious, I'd say probably season five. Because I mean, even like it's still a decent season, and it definitely takes a dip after season four. But I think seasons six and seven, they both have, a fair amount of good stuff going on in them. There's a lot of entertaining stuff in each of those. And season five, I think that's, when the Dornish plot and everything going on with the Faith and King's Landing, that's a lot of boring plot lines.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I definitely agree with you there. Now, getting even more specific, do you think you could name a favorite episode? Or
Favorite
if not, a top three favorite episodes?
I mean, I would say my favorite has to be season three, episode five, Kissed by Fire, I think it's called. That's where you see Jamie, he's reached Harrenhal with the Boltons, he's with Brienne, and it's post, his hand being chopped off, and you get that scene of him in the bathtub kind of explaining everything that happened, when he killed the Mad King and earned the name Kingslayer, that moment that he thinks is his greatest deed, but everyone kind of looks down on him for because it kind of besmirches his honor, and you kind of get that look into his character. That's kind of when you first get the look behind the curtain of who he actually is, and that's when you start to be like, okay, this isn't a villain. This is someone who's been completely misunderstood.
I think I think a lot of, I don't want to say casual fans, but other people would say like Battle of the Bastards is the best, or probably not the Red Wedding, but they're like
Right.
it's or Reigns of Castamere. They probably think it's not the best, but it's like one of the most powerful and memorable, and you feel the most. But I think in terms of Jamie's character development and how that kind of portrays how much he's changed, I think that could be that's a really good answer.
Yeah. And again, there's probably some personal bias in there, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a great scene. And the rest of the episode, too, you get a lot of good stuff in there.
Is there a scene that you always rewatch, not just going back to an episode, but maybe YouTubing it, like being like, yeah, I want to look back and see this scene?
Yeah, I'd say probably. I mean, again, that the friend that initially introduced me to the show, he had shown me a few scenes beforehand, so I got kind of his perspective of some that maybe other people were kind of replaying. Those were like the scene of like the Battle of Blackwater and Joffrey's wedding and death. But I would say one that I replay personally would probably be the opening sequence of the season six finale when you get you know it's supposed to be Cersei's trial in the Great Sept, and you kind of see her not go, and it's the whole faith there, and the whole House Tyrell is there, and it's basically all of Cersei's enemies in King's Landing grouped in one place, and then she takes them all out with one, fell swoop, which I will say it doesn't happen in the books, probably won't happen, probably just a show only thing, but it's a really cool scene. The score is great, the acting's great, the visuals are awesome. It's a really cool scene, and it's a cold open too. So you don't get any intro before it. It's right into that. So you kind of know something's going on. You're going to watch something really cool right from the jump.
Speaking of how the books differ from the show, what do you think you enjoyed more, watching the show or reading the books?
I mean, I would say I when I started reading the books, I'd already seen the show a couple of times. So a lot of it was kind of almost reviewing, but it was kind of reliving it and kind of drag on a little bit because you know what's going on and it's just reading words on a page, so it can kind of get a little boring, can kind of drag on. But then again, you get so much more detail. There's so many more characters, extra plot lines. There's so much more stuff going on. So I would say first watch of the show was probably the most enjoyable experience I had with that kind of world, but then reading the books has really given like an extra insight that, really can't be understated. So they really go hand in hand. It's tough to choose just one.
Yeah, and I have yet to read the book, so maybe that'll be a long-term project
Yeah.
that I have to take down.
Yeah, it seems really daunting when you first start and then you get going. And I mean, honestly, once you finish the first one, you just kind of cruise on by. And the first one's great too. So it's
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do it. So you talked about how season eight, the last season, was probably your least favorite. If you were to rewrite the ending, how would you have done it?
well, first, I think some of the things they do aren't necessarily like wrong necessarily. I think it just kind of rushed. I think Daenerys's, final arc of turning into, this mad queen, kind of resembling her father in a way. I don't necessarily dislike it. I just think it kind of was kind of rushed. There's some seeds planted early on, even, and you can kind of see them building it up a little bit, but it really takes a sudden turn. Just kind of seems like she just snaps all at once, especially on that first watch. So that's one thing I would change. I would, space that out a little bit, build that up a little bit more. And then a lot of the changes I would make have to be character based. You know what I mean? I think the plot is still pretty online. But I think what they do with people like John and Jamie, I think they just kind of make them a little one dimensional. They kind of throw out Jamie's arc, have him go back to Cersei, have him claim he didn't care about the innocent people. That kind of seems like it's gone against seven other seasons of development. And then John in the last season just kind of becomes this walking endorsement for Daenerys, and he kind of lacks any sense of autonomy in a way. He doesn't have his own motivations or desires anymore. So I think that would be the main thing is just kind of changing these characters and kind of what they do. I wouldn't have Jamie make that final decision to go back to King's Landing. I would, make John, maybe have him, make a ploy for the throne. It's not necessarily something, I could necessarily see him doing, but I think it would have been more entertaining than him just not even really being necessary in that last season. He didn't really do much. So
Now, would you still have Arya? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name. The Night King? Would
yeah,
you still have Arya kill the Night King?
you know, I I don't think I would. Like I love Arya, and that's a great scene. And a lot of people complain that they kind of built John up to be the one, to do it. And it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes down in the books. And I will also say there isn't a necessary Night King in the books. There's no pointed out leader of the White Walkers in the books. We don't know a lot about him. So who knows how it goes down in the books. But when it's in the show, I think it did kind of leave a sour taste in people's mouth, you know, having Arya, someone who was so disconnected from that whole plot, come in and be the one to end it. So as much as I love Arya and hate taking away a cool moment for her, I don't think I would keep that. No.
Yeah, I think personally I would have had John kill the Night King.
I think I would have Jon. I think I would have had, as much as it would kind of be the same as Arya, in terms of being disconnected from the story, but I'd like to see my guy Jamie do it, that would have been cool, but that also wouldn't have fit. So I think it had to be either Jon, and maybe even Daenerys, someone that had maybe a little bit more significance of killing, a king, because that's what the Night King really was in the show.
Could have been cool if it was Samwell Tarly because he is the first guy shown to kill a White Walker.
That's right.
That could have been cool if he snuck up behind him and got him. But
Nice little full circle moment for Sam. That would have been
yeah,
pretty nice. Yeah.
that would have been cool. Um, while we were talking, I had this thought. Do you think Game of Thrones, hypothetically, after George releases all the books, do you think it could be rebooted in the future with a whole new cast once they know can't canonically how it ends? Do you see them potentially making a new show in the future?
I do, but it would be further down the line, certainly. They've already put so much money and resources, HBO that is, into, this universe. They're making new spin-off shows. There's currently House of the Dragon. There's a Night of the Seven Kingdoms coming out this winter. And then I don't know if you've seen this, but George R. R. Martin has recently come out and said that there are more sequel and spin-off shows currently in development at HBO, which was kind of rumored in the past few years. But now him coming out and confirming that, we don't necessarily know what they are exactly, but pouring that much stuff into this, it's hard to see him just pressing the reset button right away. But we see so many big franchises just get reboots and redos all the time now. Like even Harry Potter, which only the last Harry Potter movie came out probably just over 10 years ago, maybe. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even, it's not like crazy long, but now that's getting like they're rebooting that with a TV series. Everything seems to get rebooted, and it seems like a trend to kind of go back to the well that works, rather than trying to create new ideas, that
Yeah.
so I definitely see it, but it wouldn't be for a little while, I think.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. I think the reboot would only be valuable if they could do it when the books ended and they know exactly how George R. R. Martin wanted it to end. And
Right.
they could get like a more canon ending.
Yeah, I agree.
So I have a couple fun questions at the end. Would you ever name a pet after a Game of Thrones character? And
I certainly would.
yeah.
I'd go as far to say I'd name a kid after a Game of Thrones character. Yeah.
Okay. That's I assume let's say it's you have a girl, right?
Yeah.
Are you naming her Jamie too?
It's a unisex name. It could be done.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think I'd name my kid Jamie if I have a girl regardless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's too many risks with that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Um, what character do you think would make the best real life friend?
Real life friend, I think it depends on, your different path of life. I think someone I'd like to have as a friend, it's hard to go against someone like Sam, someone who's just like nice guy. He's always there for you, But then,
Yeah.
if I'm maybe, running for president, I want my best friend to be Davos, someone who's gonna hype me up and, do what's do what's right, be in my ear, give me good counsel.
Yeah. See, my thought is I would either think Bronn or Podrick.
Podrick, yeah, Podrick would be great.
I was
I don't know.
thinking Braun because just in case anybody tried to mess with you, you'd have Braun to back you up.
That's true,
He'd do
but
it in a heartbeat.
he would.
You might have to buy him something after, but
Almost definitely, yeah.
um all right. This last one, you could say Jamie, but if you say Jamie, you have to give me a second place.
Hmm.
Which character do you think you're most similar to?
I mean, I think it's hard to say for yourself because I think anyone can look at a character and see traits that they share with them, you know? So, I mean, I definitely see, traits I share with Jamie, but I'll give someone else. Um, it's tough to say, man. I don't know. I think John kind of has a similar, maybe, demeanor at times, you know.
Stoic.
Not even necessarily stoic, but he can have a tendency to kind of space himself out, and I think that's something maybe I'm prone to do. I like my own time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no. We're all skittish, aren't we?
yeah, a little skittish.
Um, yeah, I think I got enough. Thanks for taking the time, Miller.
Yeah, of course, man.
All right. I'll see you.
Yeah, you look good.